Umuaka and Maria were inseparable from the moment they were born. Born just a few months apart, they grew up as neighbors in the bustling village of Umuaka, tucked away in southeastern Nigeria. Their mothers, Uju and Ngozi, had been best friends since childhood, and it seemed only natural that the girls would follow in their footsteps. From the time they could walk, Umuaka and Maria did everything together. They chased butterflies in the open fields, splashed in the cool stream that ran through the village, and played pretend with makeshift toys crafted from banana leaves and old tins. Their laughter echoed through the dusty streets of Umuaka, a reminder of the simple joys of childhood. As they grew older, their bond only deepened. The girls shared everything: clothes, books, and secrets. But while they were alike in many ways, they each had their own unique charm. Umuaka was tall and elegant, with smooth caramel skin and a striking confidence that made heads turn wherever she went. She carried herself with the poise of someone destined for greatness. People often said she had a magnetic aura, a natural-born leader. Maria, on the other hand, had a quiet, graceful beauty that drew people in subtly. Her soft, expressive eyes seemed to hold 1,000 stories, and her calm demeanor made her easy to talk to. She wasn't as outgoing as Umuaka, but her thoughtfulness and humility left a lasting impression on anyone who met her. Despite their differences, they complemented each other perfectly. Where Umuaka's boldness would sometimes come across as intimidating, Maria's gentleness softened the edges. And where Maria's reserved nature might have made her fade into the background, Umuaka's presence ensured she was never overlooked. As teenagers, Umuaka and Maria discovered a shared dream. One day, during a visit from Umuaka's cousin, Nkechi, who worked as an accountant in Lagos, their imaginations were sparked. Nkechi spoke passionately about her job, describing how she helped businesses balance their books and solve complex financial puzzles. "You mean you can actually make a living by just organizing numbers?" Umuaka asked, her eyes wide with interest. Nkechi laughed. "It's more than just organizing numbers. It's about finding patterns, solving problems, and making sure businesses run smoothly. It's challenging, but it's also rewarding." Maria listened quietly, her mind already spinning with possibilities. Later that evening, she turned to Umuaka and said, "Maybe we could do something like that. Imagine us working in a big office in Lagos, wearing suits and solving important problems." Umuaka's face lit up. "Yes. We'll become accountants, Maria. We'll make a name for ourselves and show everyone what we're capable of." From that day on, they were focused. They studied hard, staying up late to read and helping each other with difficult subjects. Their dedication paid off. When they graduated from university years later, they both held degrees in accounting, each with top honors. "We did it," Umuaka said, hugging Maria tightly as they posed for photos in their graduation robes. Maria smiled, her heart full. "We did. Now it's time for the next chapter." Before starting their careers, the girls decided to return to Umuaka for a brief visit. It was a chance to rest, reconnect with their roots, and prepare for the challenges ahead. The morning of their departure from the city was filled with laughter and chatter. Kayamika, ever the fashion enthusiast, carefully packed her best outfits, imagining how impressed the villagers would be by her transformation. "Imagine how everyone will look at us now," she said, holding up a sleek red dress. Two graduates, ready to conquer the world. Maria chuckled, folding a simple floral dress into her bag. "Yes, but I think I'll miss the simplicity of the village. Lagos will be exciting, but here, this is home." Kayamika paused, a thoughtful look crossing her face. "Home is nice, but don't you think we've outgrown it? There's so much more out there waiting for us, Maria." Maria nodded slowly. "You're right, but sometimes it's good to come back and remember where you started." Their differences in perspective had always been a source of balance between them. Kayamika's ambition pushed them forward, while Maria's grounded nature kept them steady. When they arrived in Umuaka, the village welcomed them with open arms. Their mothers beamed with pride, telling everyone about their daughter's achievements. The air buzzed with excitement. "You girls have made us proud," Mom Ngozi said, her face glowing. "Everyone in the village is talking about you." Kayamika basked in the attention, enjoying the admiration and praise. Maria, though flattered, remained humble, thanking people quietly and deflecting the spotlight. Over the next few days, the girls fell back into the rhythm of village life. They visited old friends, helped their mothers with household chores, and spent evenings under the stars, reminiscing about their childhood adventures. But amidst the warmth and nostalgia, an undercurrent of change was brewing, something neither of them could have anticipated. One morning, as they sat by the stream, Maria picked up a pebble and tossed it into the water. "Do you think life will ever be this simple again?" she asked, watching the ripples spread. Kayamika smiled, stretching her legs out on the grass. "Simple is nice, Maria, but we didn't come this far to stay the same. Our lives are just beginning." Maria nodded, but a strange feeling tugged at her heart. The tranquility of their homecoming was about to be disrupted in ways that would test their friendship, their values, and their dreams. For across the village, a figure was arriving, someone who would change everything. The village of Umuaka was buzzing with excitement. From the women selling produce at the market to the men lounging under the large mango tree near the palace, there was one name on everyone's lips: Prince Obinna. The king's only son had been away for over a decade, studying business management and working in the United States. Now he was back, and the villagers couldn't contain their anticipation. It was well known that the prince was of marriageable age, and his return meant one thing: he would soon choose a bride. "He's so handsome," Mama Nkechi exclaimed, her hands busy arranging tomatoes on her wooden stall. "As handsome as the sun, and twice as bright. And they say he's as educated as the professors in Abuja," added another woman. "Educated and rich," a third chimed in, her voice full of admiration. What more could any girl ask for? Kayamika was walking past the market stalls when she overheard the conversation. Dressed in a vibrant Ankara dress that accentuated her flawless complexion, she couldn't help but smile. She had always dreamed of marrying someone wealthy and influential, and the idea of the prince returning was too tantalizing to ignore. The sun was high in the sky as Kayamika strolled through the market, browsing through colorful fabrics. She loved the attention she received as she moved, her poise and beauty turning heads. She imagined herself as a queen, wearing the finest clothes and being admired by all. Her musings were interrupted by a deep voice behind her. "Excuse me, but do you know where I can find a tailor nearby?" Startled, Kayamika turned around. Standing before her was a man who looked every bit as regal as the stories described. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a confident, yet approachable demeanor. His skin was a rich, warm brown, and his smile revealed perfectly white teeth. Kayamika's heart skipped a beat. She immediately recognized him, Prince Obina. For a moment, she was too stunned to speak. Then, regaining her composure, she smiled sweetly. "Why, yes, Your Highness. The best tailor in the village is just down the road." The prince's eyes softened with appreciation. "Thank you," he said, his voice warm and polite. His gaze flickered to the fabrics in her hand. "And may I say, you have excellent taste. Those fabrics are stunning." Kayamika felt her cheeks flush. She returned his compliment with a confident smile. "Thank you, Your Highness. It's an honor to meet you." They exchanged a few more pleasantries before the prince nodded politely and went on his way. Kayamika watched him walk away, her thoughts racing. "This is my chance," she thought, clutching the fabrics to her chest. The prince could be mine. As Prince Obina walked away, his thoughts lingered on the young woman he had just met. She was undeniably beautiful, with an air of confidence that was hard to ignore. But there was something about her tone and demeanor that unsettled him, a sense of entitlement that he had seen in many women during his time abroad. He sighed, shaking his head. He had returned to Umuaka hoping to find someone genuine, someone who valued kindness and humility. Beauty was abundant in the world, but true character was rare. Later that evening, as he sat with his father in the palace courtyard, the king asked, "How do you find the village after so many years?" "It's good to be back," Obina replied with a small smile. "Everything feels familiar, yet different. The people, the traditions, it's refreshing." And the young women the king teased, a twinkle in his eye. Obina chuckled. "I met someone interesting today," he admitted. "But I'm not sure she's the kind of person I'm looking for." The king nodded knowingly. "Take your time, my son. A good wife is not just a companion. She is a partner, a source of strength. Look beyond the surface." Obina pondered his father's words. He had returned to find a wife, but he wanted more than just a pretty face. He wanted someone who shared his values, someone who could walk beside him as an equal. The news of Kayamika's encounter with the prince spread quickly through the village. By the next morning, everyone was talking about it. "They say the prince spoke to Kayamika at the market," Mama Nkechi exclaimed, her voice full of excitement. "Of course he would notice her," said another woman. "She's the most beautiful girl in the village." Maria listened quietly as the women gossiped. She was happy for her friend, but felt a strange unease. She knew Kayamika well enough to understand how much this encounter would mean to her. At home, Kayamika was radiant with excitement. "Maria, you won't believe it. I met the prince today." Maria's eyes widened. You did? What happened? Kayamika recounted the story in vivid detail, emphasizing the prince's compliments and how polite he had been. He even noticed my taste in fabrics, Kayamika said, her voice brimming with pride. It's only a matter of time before he realizes I'm the perfect match for him. Maria smiled, though a part of her couldn't help but wonder if Kayamika's confidence might be premature. A few days later, Maria had her own encounter with the prince. It was during a community event at the palace, where villagers were invited to celebrate Obina's return.
Maria had always loved these gatherings not for the pomp and ceremony, but for the sense of unity they brought. She sat under a large tree, her notebook balanced on her lap, scribbling down lines of poetry inspired by the vibrant scene before her. "Good afternoon," a familiar deep voice said, startling her. She looked up and saw Prince Obina standing before her, a curious smile on his face. "Good afternoon, Your Highness," she said, rising to her feet and bowing slightly. "Please, no need for formalities," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "What are you writing?" Maria hesitated, then handed him her notebook. "It's just a poem," she said softly. He read the lines, his expression thoughtful. "This is beautiful," he said, handing the notebook back to her. "You have a gift." Maria blushed. "Thank you, Your Highness. Writing is just something I do to pass the time." They began talking, their conversation flowing naturally. Maria treated him with the same respect she showed everyone, and this intrigued him. She wasn't trying to impress him or gain his favor. She was simply being herself. By the time they parted ways, Obina couldn't stop thinking about her. Meanwhile, Kayamika remained confident that she had caught the prince's attention. She began turning down suitors, brushing off their advances with a dismissive wave. "I'm waiting for someone special," she told her mother one evening. "Kayamika, be careful," Mama Uju warned. "The heart is a delicate thing. Don't pin all your hopes on one man." But Kayamika wouldn't hear it. In her mind, she was already destined to be the future queen. Little did she know, Prince Obina's heart was being drawn in an entirely different direction, one that would soon ignite a storm of emotions. The buzz of the prince's return had yet to fade in Umuaka. Each day, stories of his interactions with the villagers spread like wildfire. The women whispered about his charm, the men admired his humility, and the elders spoke of his sharp mind. Among all the chatter, two names often surfaced: Kayamika and Maria. Prince Obina had been observing the two friends from afar. His encounter with Kayamika at the market had lingered in his mind, but not for the reasons she might have hoped. He admired her beauty, but her air of superiority left him unsettled. She had treated him with respect, but there was a certain aloofness in the way she interacted with others, a sense of entitlement that didn't sit well with him. Confidence is good, he thought to himself, but pride can be dangerous. On the other hand, his meeting with Maria at the community gathering had been a pleasant surprise. She was unlike anyone he had met in a long time, humble, kind, and completely unpretentious. Her writing, in particular, had captivated him. The day Prince Obina met Maria under the large mahogany tree in the palace courtyard had been unplanned but deeply impactful. It was a bright, sunny afternoon, and the villagers had gathered for a cultural celebration. The air was filled with the rhythmic beats of drums, the laughter of children, and the smell of freshly prepared jollof rice. Maria, however, had found a quiet corner away from the commotion. She sat cross-legged under the tree, her notebook balanced on her lap. Her pen moved swiftly across the page, her brows furrowed in concentration. "Good afternoon," a voice said, interrupting her thoughts. Startled, she looked up to see Prince Obina standing before her. His presence was commanding yet calm, his kind eyes locked on hers. "Good afternoon, Your Highness," she said quickly, standing up and bowing slightly. The prince smiled. "Please, there's no need for formalities. May I join you?" Maria hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Of course, Your Highness." He sat down beside her, glancing at the notebook in her hands. "What are you writing?" "It's just a poem," she replied softly. "Something to pass the time." Intrigued, he extended his hand. "May I read it?" She hesitated again, then handed the notebook to him. As he read the lines, his expression changed, from curiosity to amazement. The poem spoke of life in the village, the resilience of its people, and the quiet beauty of everyday moments. Her words painted vivid images, and her emotions were raw and genuine. "This is incredible," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "You're very talented." Maria blushed, shaking her head. "Thank you, Your Highness. But it's just a hobby." They talked for hours, their conversation flowing effortlessly. Obina asked about her inspirations, her favorite poets, and her dreams. Maria, in turn, asked about his experiences abroad and his plans for the future. What struck Obina the most was how Maria treated him. She respected him, but she didn't fawn over him like most others did. To her, he was just a person, not a prince. When they finally parted ways, Obina felt a connection he hadn't experienced in years. Maria's authenticity had touched something deep within him. Meanwhile, Kayamika had been carefully plotting her next move. She was determined to leave a lasting impression on the prince, convinced that she was the perfect match for him. She spent hours picking out the right outfits, rehearsing conversations in her head, and strategizing ways to cross paths with him again. One evening, she managed to secure an invitation to a small dinner hosted at the palace for the village elders. Dressed in an elegant gown that showcased her beauty, she entered the palace with her head held high. During the dinner, she made sure to position herself where the prince could see her. When their eyes met, she smiled sweetly, and he nodded politely in return. But as the evening progressed, Kayamika's true nature began to show. She dismissed a servant who accidentally spilled water on her dress, her tone sharp and unforgiving. She spoke loudly, interrupting others to share stories that highlighted her accomplishments. The prince watched quietly, his earlier doubts about her character solidifying. Back in the palace that night, Obina reflected on the two women. Kayamika was everything a traditional suitor might be, beautiful, confident, and bold. But her actions revealed a lack of humility and grace. Maria, on the other hand, was a breath of fresh air. Her humility, intelligence, and kindness stood out in a way that was impossible to ignore. She didn't try to impress him. She simply was herself. The prince's mother, Queen Adayabi, noticed her son's contemplative mood. "Is something troubling you, my son?" she asked gently. Obina shook his head. "No, Mama. I'm just thinking about the kind of person I want by my side." "And have you found her?" the queen asked, a knowing smile on her face. "Maybe," he replied, his thoughts drifting to Maria's soft smile and thoughtful words. As word spread of the prince's growing interest in Maria, the village began to take notice. Some were surprised, expecting him to gravitate toward someone like Kayamika. Others, especially those who knew Maria well, were delighted. Kayamika, however, was furious when she heard the whispers. She couldn't believe the prince would choose someone so ordinary over her. "Maria? Of all people?" she said to herself, her voice dripping with disbelief. "This can't be happening." Determined not to lose, Kayamika vowed to do whatever it took to win the prince's heart, even if it meant betraying the friend she had grown up with. Prince Obina found himself thinking about Maria more and more. Her words lingered in his mind, and her kindness left an impression that beauty alone could not rival. One afternoon he sought her out again, finding her at the same spot under the mahogany tree. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," he said, his voice warm. Maria looked up, smiling. "Not at all, Your Highness." As they talked, Obinna knew he had made his decision. Maria was the kind of woman he had been searching for. Someone who could challenge him intellectually, inspire him creatively, and support him wholeheartedly. But the path ahead would not be easy. He was well aware of Kayamika's growing anger and the potential fallout of his choice.